1. The small intestine is bigger than the large intestine. The human body is pretty weird. The small intestine measures at 20 feet long and 1 inch in diameter. Meanwhile, the large intestine is 5 feet long and 3 inch in diameter. Essentially, the small intestine is larger than the large intestine. 2. 90% of U.S. money has cocaine on it. Either from exposure or drug use, a study revealed that 90% of the dollars circulating in the economy have cocaine on it. Traces of cocaine were found reaching 0.006 micrograms, several thousand times smaller than salt. The green dye on dollars causes cocaine residue to stick to the bills. 3. Hell is real. There's an actual village in southern Norway named Hell. However, it may not be true to its name. The weather in Hell is consistently below 20 degrees Celsius, with lows dropping to negative temperatures. 4. Lara Croft's PS1 proportions were a mistake. When Toby Gard was editing the character model for Lara Croft, he mistakenly typed 150% instead of 50% for Croft's bust size. The proportions we see on the PS1 game were a result of this error. 5. In some parts of Texas, it is illegal to cuss in front of a dead person. You can't swear in front of a corpse in Texas. In Reno, possession and distribution of sex toys is also illegal. 6. Some people experience post-sex sadness. If you've ever felt intense feelings of sadness, anger, and distress after sex, you may have gone through postcoital dysphoria, PCD. It happens especially after orgasm. 7. People have tried to sue God. Again, it sounds like one of the made-up funny facts, but people have actually filed lawsuits against God, for reasons you can imagine. Negligence, failure to keep people away from the devil, and other harmful acts of God are quoted in most of these cases. 8. Uranus was first named George. When William Herschel first discovered the planet in 1781, the English astronomer named it the Georgium Sidus, the Georgian planet, in honor of King George III. 9. Twilight was as intense as you remember. If you splice the quiet staring in all 5 films together, there is exactly 26 minutes of intense silence. 10. A man once wore 60 shirts and 9 pairs of jeans to the airport to avoid extra fees. In a flight from China to Africa, a man wore 60 shirts and 9 pairs of jeans because he didn't want to pay for extra baggage. He wore it throughout an 11.5-hour flight. 11. Carrots can turn you orange. If you eat 3 large carrots a day for several weeks, the increased beta-carotene in your blood could turn your skin orange. 12. Cows hate country music. You'd think that cows would vibe with country music, but it's actually not the case. According to research, cows produce 3% less milk when listening to country music. The study was conducted on a Scottish herd of 45 cows, which were made to listen to classical music and country music. With classical music, their milk produce increased, with one particular cow making 1 liter more milk than usual. However, with country music, 44 cows were observed to yield 3% less milk. 13. A man once legally changed his name for losing a bet. After losing a drunken poker bet, a New Zealand man had his name legally changed to Full Metal Havoc, more sexy and intelligent than Spock and all the superheroes combined with Frost Nova, in 2009. After 5 years, the name was approved by the government. Now, all 99 characters of his new name are on his government documents. 14. Dolly Parton once lost a Dolly Parton lookalike contest. Dolly Parton once entered a celebrity lookalike contest as herself, and lost. The contest was held in a San Francisco club. In order to somewhat disguise herself, Parton exaggerated her features with makeup. However, she got the least applause of all contestants, and ultimately lost to a drag queen. 15. Peanuts are used to make dynamite. Aside from giving some people explosive diarrhea, peanuts can also be used to make actual explosives. Once peanut oil is processed, it can create glycerol, which, in turn, can be used to make nitroglycerin, one of the main components of dynamite. 16. Vin Diesel is a seasoned voice actor. Vin Diesel might be known by many as Dominic Toretto of the Fast and the Furious franchise, but he's got pipes of a different kind. He voices Groot in the Guardians of the Galaxy film series, and voiced the Iron Giant. 17. Game of Thrones Night's Watch cloaks are made from IKEA rugs. Creating something like Game of Thrones takes a lot of painstaking attention to detail to take people to the rugged, sooty world of Westeros. However, you'd be surprised that some of the production design are just from everyday things. Namely, IKEA rugs for the Night Watch's cloaks. IKEA has since released a tutorial for how to make GOT cloaks. 18. Friday the 13th was filmed at an actual camp, and people kept scaring campers away. Camp Crystal Lake might be fictional, but it was shot in a fully functional summer camp. Because of Friday the 13th, people used to scare children away from the camp to the point that the Camp Nova Bosco website used to have a disclaimer against using the film to scare kids. 19. The house from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is now a family restaurant. After shooting the 70s slasher, the suburban house that once saw the horrors of Leatherface was turned into a restaurant. Initially, it was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre-themed restaurant, complete with a Leatherface dummy. However, it was since rebranded as the Grand Central Cafe, with less of a gimmick on the venue being the Massacre House. 20. Your childhood high school shows were all shot in the same place. iCarly, Saved by the Bell, and That's So Raven were all shot in the same school. 21. Lobsters communicate with pee. Lobsters communicate by urinating at each other with the bladders on each side of their heads. 22. The organs in Grey's Anatomy surgeries aren't fake. They're cow organs. You were probably expecting something more dark, huh? Using synthetic organs for the operation scenes would have been shabby for a medical drama. Additionally, the hands shown in Grey's Anatomy operation close-ups are real surgeons' hands. 23. The Millennium Falcon was inspired by a burger. Sometimes, little everyday things can inspire the big ones. For the Millennium Falcon, that little thing was a burger. The side cockpit is said to be based on an olive. Since then, the Millennium Falcon has gotten flack from generations of Star Wars characters for being affectionately dubbed as a piece of junk. 24. The Simpsons creator intended for Homer Simpson to be Krusty the Clown. If you follow The Simpsons, you'd notice how Homer Simpson and Krusty the Clown look almost identical. Simpsons creator Matt Groening was actually planning to reveal Homer Simpson behind all that clown makeup. However, to avoid the plot from getting too complex, he scrapped the idea. 25. The CDC website has a zombie preparedness section. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention contain and monitor epidemics. However, you'd be surprised that their websites have sections devoted to preparing for the zombie apocalypse. 26. 7% of Christian Americans pray for a parking spot. According to a 2014 survey in Nashville, 7% of Christian Americans pray to get parking spots. Is it really that hard? 27. A man once hired someone to slap him to avoid checking Facebook. Manish Sethi hired a woman to slap him in the face every time he tried checking Facebook at work. He paid the woman $8 an hour. 28. U.S. President Coolidge used to sound emergency bells as a joke. The 30th U.S. president made a habit of sounding the emergency bell placed at his veranda and then hiding when the Secret Service came. He did this enough times to make them remove the bell altogether. 29. There's a company you can pay to kidnap you. The Old Time Realite is a French company that offers kidnapping services. If you pay them a fee, they will come to kidnap you when you least expect it, ropes, binds, and all. They won't do it immediately, though. They'll wait for a certain period so you won't remember that you paid someone to kidnap you. 30. In Russia, you can get fined for driving a car that's too dirty. If the dirt on your car completely obscures your license plate, you might just get fined. 31. Thousands of people write to God yearly. Every year, Jerusalem receives an influx of letters from thousands of people addressed to God. It happens so regularly that there is even a letters to God department of the Israeli Postal Service. 32. The CIA spent $25 million on spy cats. In the 1960s, the CIA tried using cats to gather intel on the Kremlin and Soviet embassies. They equipped cats with a batter, microphone, and antenna to record data. You can guess how that turned out. 33. 152 people in the U.S. are named LOL. Laugh out loud, or lots of love. What it means, we may never know, but 152 people have LOL as their legit birth name. Most of these LOLs live in Wyoming. 34. Your brain uses 12 watts of energy to think and does not feel pain. The brain uses 20% of our resting metabolic calorie rate to keep functioning. It does not feel any pain because there are no pain receptors in the brain itself. 35. Anatophobia is the fear of being watched by a duck. A person with anatophobia fears that somewhere in the world, a duck or a goose is watching him, her. 36. Cans of diet soda will float in water, regular soda cans will sink. It sounds ironic, but this funny fact is proven. Cans of regular soda tend to be more dense than water, so they sink. Cans of diet soda are usually less dense than water, so they float. 37. Koalas feed their newborns poop. After baby koalas are born, their parents feed them poop. This helps them digest eucalyptus leaves as they grow. 38. Walt Disney was afraid of mice. Although Disney's most iconic character is a mouse, Walt Disney actually feared mice. 39. The western lowland gorilla's scientific name is gorilla. Similarly, the lynx, lynx, and caracal are animals that have a repeated scientific name. This happens when the genus and species name of an animal is the same. 40. Horses cannot breathe through their mouths. Horses don't have an instinct to breathe through their mouths because their soft palate seals their pharynx except when swallowing. Horses can't breathe through a sealed pharynx, and that is why they only breathe through their nostrils. 41. Saudi Arabia imports camels from Australia. When you think Saudi, you automatically think of desert sands and camels. It seems like one of the funny facts that are hard to believe, but Saudi does get some of their camels from Australia. Native Saudi camels are used for racing and domestic purposes, but the imported camels are used for their meat. 42. Loofahs are vegetables. If you look at a loofah, you might think it came from a dried sea creature. However, this scrubbing sponge is actually made from a vegetable. Loofahs are made from the fibrous flesh of the mature Loofah aegyptiaca and L. cyclindrica gourd. They're distant relatives of melons and squash. Before reaching maturity, loofah is also edible. 43. Eagles don't mate while airborne. You may have encountered the myth that eagles mate in the air. However, eagles mate on branches or nests. The fact that people even think it's possible is just one of the funny facts. 44. People once claimed that coconuts kill more people than sharks yearly. In a 1984 study, Injuries Due to Falling Coconuts, it was claimed that falling coconuts kill 150 per year, which is a lot more than shark-related deaths at 5 per year. However, it was actually only a misinterpretation of the statistics gathered from Papua New Guinea. However, there have been a number of documented cases of coconuts killing people. Falling coconuts can cause fatal injuries to the head, neck, shoulders, and back. 45. NASA saw 168 errors in the space film Armageddon. The film Armageddon is so scientifically inaccurate that NASA uses it as a test for their management training program. NASA shows the film to new managers and makes them spot as many errors as possible. So far, about 168 have been found. 46. A Lord of the Rings actor would rather hike up a whole mountain than ride a helicopter. One of the things that makes Lord of the Rings lore so rich is the immersive environment of the story's settings. While shooting the films, the cast had to fly to remote locations via helicopter. Sean Bean, who plays Boromir and Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, was afraid of flight and would only do it if he had no choice. During the shootings for the Fellowship crossing snowy mountains, he'd climb for 2 hours every morning to get to the set. He would make the climb already dressed as Boromir. 47. Norway's reality TV is very different. Although reality TV in the US is saturated with Kardashian brand drama, it's very different for Norway. Norway's first significant reality TV show was a broadcast showing the Bergen Line. About 20% of the population watched the train for its entire 7-hour journey. This popularized slow TV. Now, Norwegians would watch coastal cruises, people knitting, and bird feeding. I guess that's their ASMR. 48. Big Brother US only showed news from the outside world on one day. One of the main gimmicks of Big Brother is that the contestants are not allowed to be a part of the outside world. Communication was barred from their loved ones and they weren't allowed to keep up with current events. However, the producers of Big Brother delivered the news to housemates just once during the 9/11 attacks. 49. Pringles are not potato chips. From 2007 to 2009, Pringles had a court issue where judges debated whether Pringles were potato chips or not. In 2009, it was ruled that they were potato chips. However, Pringles are actually just 42% potato, the rest is made of wheat. 50. Watermelon is Oklahoma's state vegetable. Here's another case of are tomatoes fruits or vegetables? You may remember differently from preschool, but watermelons are actually classified as a fruit and a vegetable. Watermelons came from the cucumber and gourd families, which are vegetables. So, in 2007, Oklahoma declared the watermelon as their state vegetable. Their state fruit? Strawberries.